got an interim coach. The coach is gone. Yeah, Scott Frost, of course, let go, and Mickey Joseph and Jason and I were just kind of cutting up as we did last night, of course, on our Nebraska show with Greg about the impact that Mickey Joseph's going to have on this team. And you're much closer to the situation than we are, and interact with these guys on a basically a daily basis. And Mickey Joseph is just a guy that's to be respected and admired by the players there. So this could be a pretty positive impact.
Yeah, and I expect it to be, compared to the previous 3 weeks. Mickey is definitely a motivator, and he knows this university well. He played here. He played against Oklahoma in his college days, and so this game brings back a lot of memories for him, and I'm sure that he's going to instill that in his players. And I expect them to be ready to go and probably be more fired up than they have been all season, because I think we've talked a couple times on our show, Mark, that a lot of times there just wasn't a lot of juice out there in the last couple of home games, and it's kind of disturbing at times.
I'll ask one other question and then cut Jason loose here on the Oklahoma matchup with the Huskers. But we even beyond there being the typical, okay, coach gets fired, interim coach comes in, can he rally the troops, get them to, what term I was looking for before, Jason, was battle cry. I was searching all around for battle cry. That's what I was looking for. Can he kind of fire up the battle cry? Even more than your typical coaching transition, I think this is one where the players may be even more relieved than usual, because this buildup about Scott Frost and all the turmoil, for as much as I'm sure they've tried to and been successful, maybe shutting that out of the room, man, this has been swirling around this program for a long time. And now finally, whether they individually supported Scott Frost or not, they know that they need to move on. And it seems like there's probably a lot of pressure taken off of this team.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, it has been really tough on the players. I mean, obviously they love their head coach. The guy that recruited them is now no longer their coach. And Mickey Joseph's, he's in his first year here, but he is a guy that, like I said, he was no stranger to the program. And I mean, he stepped in, I think, day one and demanded respect from not just his wide receiver room, but the entire team. And it's been well known and well documented how much the players love, Mickey Joseph's, fire and intensity, and he comes from a football family, and like we mentioned last night, that this is not just your typical interim head coach, 2 games finishing out the year. I mean, he's got 9 games to prove himself, and right now you throw everything away that happened in the first 3 weeks, and it's a fresh start. And like I mentioned, I think you're going to see a different attitude out of the team, but how that translates on the field, I don't know. Especially on the defensive side of the ball, because obviously Mickey is an offensive guy. But like he mentioned in his press conference yesterday, that a head coach, a good head coach, he pointed out like his brother that played quarterback in college and then played defensive back in the NFL. And that's why he's a defensive coordinator in the NFL and a former head coach in the NFL. And so being an offensive guy means that you need to know both sides of the ball. And he's a pretty knowledgeable guy when it comes to football.
Jason, anything you'd like to hit on concerning the matchup?
Yeah, so I think it's very interesting. Oklahoma over the last few years, of course, two game into the season, but over the last 10, 12 years, Oklahoma has not consistently played well on the defensive side of the ball, and so they seem to be much improved early on in the season. But for me, I think the biggest matchup here is Oklahoma's offense against Nebraska's defense. I think that's at least for me most intriguing because Oklahoma has not probably played as well offensively through 2 games as some would expect, at least in the Oklahoma camp. And obviously Nebraska struggled on the defensive side, almost giving up 700 yards of total offense to Georgia Southern, which was just shocking to me. So give me a little bit. Yeah. So give me a little where do you think this defense is? Do you think, obviously I know Mickey Joseph's more on the offensive side of the ball, but was that just an aberration? Do you think that's how this team is performing on the defensive side of the ball? Do you feel like that jolt of energy with having Mickey Joseph kind of permeates to that side of the ball and allows this team to play maybe a little bit more emotional and better on the defensive side this week?
The defense is the biggest question mark. Like, you mentioned, they gave up a record amount of yards inside Memorial Stadium, and we're talking hundreds of years, over 100 years here. And that's the most shocking thing to all of us here is the way the defense has performed. And, just having a head coaching change, that doesn't fix missed tackles. They said that they want to play faster. To me, that's just kind of I don't really understand. I mean, aren't you trying to play as fast as you possibly can already? In my mind, when they say that, but obviously tackling has been one of the biggest issues, and then and the line of scrimmage has just been horrible. Teams have tried to get the ball out quick against Nebraska and not let their pass rush be effective, and then they're chipping the edges, and so people have come in and game planned very well against Nebraska, and we're talking about a defense that was actually very successful the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. And it's a head scratcher, it really is, but the defensive coaching staff is still in place. There's a few changes being made where defensive coordinator Eric Shenander's taking a hands-on with the safety group now, and kind of relieving Travis Fisher of having to coach both, the corners and the safeties and the nickels. So that's going to be a little bit of a change there. Maybe some more specialized deals, but bottom line is that front seven has got to start producing, and stop getting blown off the line of scrimmage. And I mean, if I'm an Oklahoma skill guy and a lineman, I'm drooling to go play against this defense right now because they are horrible right now. And I was joking last week, in the first half against Georgia Southern, I go, Oklahoma's going to hang half 100 on Nebraska in the first half next week if they keep playing like this. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, obviously the offense is playing well, and I think they'll be able to score against Oklahoma. But, yeah, the defense is the biggest question mark is can you get off the field against a high-powered offense like Oklahoma?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. How do you got to have a lot of respect for what Nebraska's being able to do on the offensive side of the ball? Casey Thompson played extremely well against Oklahoma last year with 5 touchdowns in the Red River game, and I know he's thrown a couple of ill-advised or untimely interceptions this year, but still, I think is a significant upgrade from Adrian Martinez last year. And then, Anthony Grant almost 500 yards already. In just a few games here. So tell me what you like about the matchup with Nebraska's offense going against Oklahoma's defense.
Well, right now, I mean, they started to run the ball, which has been key. And, you mentioned Anthony Grant, who's a guy that has been through it all, started out at Florida State and basically was shown the door when a new coaching staff ended, and he went to Garden City, Kansas JUCO, and things didn't work out there. And he ended up at New Mexico Military and was the number 1 JUCO player in the country last year and didn't
hopefully.
And the guy is already shown that he's probably going to be over 1,000 yards pretty easily here, and is really turned into a spectacular running back. And then A.J. Allen behind him as a freshman is also a really good looking back. So Nebraska's got the running game going right now. And, with some of the threats they have at the wide receiver position, and hopefully they can get Travis Volkolek back at tight end, who's a game changer. And that's the key. I mean, right now he's day by day, so we don't really know if he's going to play or not. But we haven't seen him play yet since he went out game one over in Dublin against Northwestern, which kind of changed the game for Nebraska. They couldn't get any more first downs in that game, and ended up not being able to score again. Northwestern came back and beat them. So, that's a big key to this offense. If Travis Volkolek plays, I think Nebraska, their offense even takes another step forward here Saturday morning.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such an intriguing matchup for me. I mean, I think, and you can play, you don't really necessarily know the mentality. I think that's the key thing here, the mentality of Nebraska coming in here. Are the players, how do the players respond to Mickey Joseph? Are they still a little bit disappointed that Frost is gone? Are they happy he's gone? Is that, what does that bring? I think coming into it, and me and Mark had talked about this, I think I was a little bit more confident in Oklahoma's ability to win this game fairly easily with Frost. Now you throw this in there, and it's a little bit, and not necessarily from a coaching perspective, but just more so on the defensive side of the ball. If anything else, I mean, you can't tell me that the athletes at Nebraska are not good enough to hold Georgia Southern to less than what they did, right? So I know that you have the players and have the athletes, so maybe it's an element of just not wanting to play for Scott Frost. So now you bring in someone else, and that's a little bit of a wild card situation. So it'll be really interesting to see. I mean, I think the start for both teams will obviously be very interesting, because if Oklahoma gets up to a 10, 14 point first quarter lead, then maybe some of those feelings kind of come back. Like, what are we doing? Hey, this is all over again. Now, if Nebraska's right there, or if it's if they take a little bit of a lead early on, then you've got all that momentum, and you've got the crowd behind you. So very, very interesting to see how this game turns out.
And I mean, last week's game against Georgia Southern was also the first two games of the season, Nebraska scored a touchdown on their opening possession in the game, and they did not do that. They went 3 and out against Georgia Southern, and Georgia Southern came down, with like an 18-play drive and punched into the end zone, and so it kind of changed that whole dynamic of that game right off. So, getting to a fast start is definitely a big key for Nebraska, and going to be a key for their attitude of how the rest of that game unfolds. And obviously it's been rough on the players. I mean, in this day and age, you can't hide from the rumors and the media and the fans on social media. They know how much their head coach was under the hot seat going into the season. And I mean, it's finally over with. Unfortunately, these guys don't have a lot of time to dwell on things. You got a game against a top 10 team in the country and an arch rival. And, it's the next game up mentality. You have to have that to be successful in this sport. And I think all these young men are they've handled it, as far as we've heard, is they've handled it like champs, and it's all business. So hopefully that carries over, and with a fresh voice leading the way. Like I said earlier, it's a fresh slate. Everything that's happened previously has been forgotten. So you know what? This is game one for Nebraska right now, and you got a stiff test, obviously, and it's a good thing it's at home. And because the Nebraska fan base probably, I might have been a little bit worried if Scott Frost was still the head coach, but I think you're going to see a big time packed house now, and a lot of those Oklahoma fans that were coming up here thinking they might be able to get a pretty cheap ticket here on game day, those might not be available now, since large part of this fan base that's been calling for Scott Frost's head has now gotten their way. And I'm not, I'm not trying to say anything bad about Scott Frost. I wanted it to work out for him. I think we all did. And unfortunately, the record speaks for itself, and it was time for a change.
Everybody can join Greg on HuskerOnline.com, Husker Online video right here on YouTube. And Greg, really the last thing I have, and then I'll leave it up to Jason if he's got anything else for you, is just regarding the program and Mickey Joseph's role now going forward through the rest of the season of just not trying to maintain a team that, hey, mathematically speaking, is in play to gun for the Big Ten Western Division title. They've only played one conference game. They lost it, close game, but they've got all the contenders in the Big Ten West right there in front of them to pick off. But in regards to this is not the way it's typically done in college football. It's even if you're having a disappointing season, even though the writing's on the wall, the coach finishes out the year, then that Sunday right after the last game on Saturday, Black Sunday, boom, we see about 12 coaches fired. But we saw it with USC and Lincoln Riley last year, or with Clay Helton fired after 2 or 3, 4 games, something in that range, of just about the same.
Ironically, who just beat Nebraska on Saturday.
Now we see it with Scott Frost. So for the interim coach, it's not just coaching the football team, but there's a recruiting class to bring in December. You're very close to recruiting. You've gone on recruiting trips for a long, long time and been involved in covering recruiting. How much of a challenge is it for an interim coach to try to keep that class and add to it before December?
Well, actually, I mean, it's funny that you asked that because, we actually, Brian Munson had a story on that. Mickey has come right in here and really taken recruiting by the reins. And Scott Frost's recruiting wasn't really that good, especially with the in-state recruiting. And so Mickey, all of a sudden, he took over Omaha and Lincoln and immediately opened up all those lines of communication and with all of the local area, especially the Omaha metro area, coaches and players, where they kind of had felt a little bit shut out under the Scott Frost, before Mickey Joseph had got here. So he'd already influenced this in that way, and plus with all his ties to the state of Louisiana, and then you add the ties with Brian Applewhite in Texas, the running backs coach, that they've already opened up a lot of new avenues in recruiting, and we've seen a big step up already in this season's class. And the key is to keep a lot, and it's more the out-of-state guys, and then you're also interested right now, which is another side note to this game. The number one player in the state of Nebraska, Malachi Coleman, probably coming down between Nebraska and Oklahoma for his decision coming up here in October. And there was actually a tweet out today, number one versus number one, head-to-head for Malachi Coleman. So, yeah, there's a lot of different dynamics going on here, and obviously recruiting is a big part of it, and Nebraska's already locked up most of the top players in the state, and they're all friends with Malachi, and they've all been working on him. And Malachi's a mainstay here on Saturdays at Nebraska games. So this is a big one when you're talking recruiting. And I think recruiting can only go up for Nebraska now that these changes have been made. And then we'll see. If there's a whole new recruiting staff or a whole new staff that comes in next season, then all bets are off, and we're probably starting all over again. But no, right now they're actually in a very strong position right now.
All right, Jason. Anything else for Greg?
No, I don't think so. I was gonna. I'm glad you mentioned Malachi Coleman, because that was going to be the question that I asked. I mean, I think it's. I don't know. I don't know what the determining factor is going to be with that kid between Oklahoma and Nebraska. I don't know if the win, whoever wins this game has a little bit of an upper hand or whatever that looks like. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Oklahoma likes right now where where they're at with him, and I'm sure Nebraska feels the same way. So I think that will be interesting to see how that continues to work out, and if whoever wins this game, if that gives them a little bit of an edge.
And the head coach now is the coach that's been recruiting Malachi this whole time as well. So that makes a big difference, especially when that coach has guys like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, to his credit, bringing into college football. So, very interesting dynamic. And I'm going to go see Malachi play tomorrow night, actually. He was back. He was hurt week 2, and he was back last week. So he's playing Lincoln Northeast tomorrow evening. So I will be out there, and I was kind of thinking in my mind earlier. I was thinking about it, and I was wondering if he would even want to do an interview after the game, because he's holding things really close to the vest right now. He didn't even come out pregame last week against Georgia Southern because he didn't want the media talking to him or seeing him. I'm not sure why, but he's kind of clammed up here lately. And I mean, he's a Lincoln East kid. I went to Lincoln East, and he's got a very strong family support system that all love the University of Nebraska very, very much. So it's going to be hard to get Malachi out of Nebraska, but if anybody can do it, Oklahoma can, in my opinion.